A single father, Luke, witnesses a wild thunderstorm and a strange cry for help. He finds a disheveled woman and two little girls stranded on a tree. That fateful rescue would unknowingly change his life forever. Luke hesitates to take them in. But something about the twins' eyes and the widow's vulnerability draws him in. He starts seeing flickers of light in his quiet, grief-heavy world. The widow, Sophie, has her own demons. As they slowly open up, Luke and Sophie learn that loss doesn't define the end. Sometimes it's just the beginning. The rain felt like it had a score to settle with the earth. The wind howled through the trees, bending them into tortured shapes as thunder cracked overhead. Luke Morgan gripped the steering wheel of his rusted pickup, squinting through the blur of water smearing across the windshield. He was only 15 minutes from home, but each second on the slippery mountain road felt like a test. The wipers flailed against the storm, barely keeping pace. He just wanted to get back to the cabin, put on a pot of coffee, and enjoy a rare weekend alone. It was at his grandparents', and the silence would be a welcomed guest. But silence, like peace, had never lasted long in Luke's life. As he turned around a bend near the old ravine, something strange caught his attention, a flicker of motion that didn't belong. Then he heard Ida barely over the Starma scream. Sharp, ragged, female. He hit the brakes. The truck skidded slightly, gravel and mud spitting up behind him as he pulled over. There it was again. A voice, frantic. Help, please. Oh God, someone. He jumped out of the cab, the rain immediately soaking through his flannel and jeans, and ran toward the trees, led by instinct and adrenaline. The forest floor was slick with runoff, and he nearly lost his footing climbing a small ridge. When he reached the top, his breath caught in his throat. There, maybe 20 feet up a pine tree, a woman clung to a large branch. Her dark hair was plastered to her face, soaked through and tangled. She wasn't alone. Yet two tiny figures, twin girls no older than 5, clung to her legs and waist like terrified baby koalas. All three were barefoot, their clothes muddy and torn. One of the girls was crying, the other just stared down at Luke, wide-eyed and silent. Yeah, I climbed up here when the water started rising, the woman shouted through the wind. They slipped. I didn't know what to do. Luke scanned the ground. The shallow creek nearby had turned into a rapid flood, probably cutting off whatever trail she'd come from. If the tree had given way, or if one of the girls had slipped. He didn't want to finish the thought. All right, he called back. Stay calm. I'm coming up. You'll fall, she cried. It's slippery. I've done worse. He hadn't, but now wasn't the time to admit that. He found footholds and gripped the trunk tightly. Every movement was deliberate, one branch at a time. The bark was slick, but he reached them. Up close, the woman looked younger than he thought, maybe early 30s. Her lips trembled, either from fear or cold. The girls clung tighter to her. Hi there, he said gently, crouching close. I'm Luke. I'm gonna help you down, okay? One of the girls nodded. The other blinked up at him, eyes full of trust and terror. He wrapped an arm around the first girl and eased her toward the trunk, guiding her hand to the branch. Then he helped the other. Last came the woman. Her hand shook as she moved, her foot slipping at one point. He caught her by the elbow. I got you, he said. Almost there. They reached the ground together, collapsing into the mud like survivors of a shipwreck. The girls sobbed into their mother's soaked dress, clinging as if they feared she'd disappear. The woman breathed out in heavy, uneven gasps. Thank you, she said hoarsely. I didn't know if anyone would. A broken bar. Luke nodded. Let's get inside. You're lucky this isn't colder, or you'd all be dealing with hypothermia. He helped them into the truck. The girls sat between them in silence. The ride to the cabin was tense, but Luke's heart was already sinking into something new. The woman stared out the window like someone barely tethered to the present. She held both girls' hands like she was afraid the storm would come into the cabin, pull them away again. His cabin sat tucked at the end of a long gravel road, just 2 bedrooms and a fireplace, but it was warm, and it was dry. He unlocked the door, let them inside, and handed out towels. The fire he lit snapped and cracked, a welcome sound after the chaos. The girls huddled near it immediately, grateful little things, while the woman stood awkwardly by the door, unsure if she belonged. Luke returned from the kitchen with 3 mugs of instant hot chocolate. Sit, he said. You look like you are going to fall over. She obeyed, gingerly sinking into the old leather couch. The girls crawled into her lap like sleepy kittens. He watched her stroke their damp hair. There was something in her eyes, a guilt, exhaustion, maybe shame. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sophie," she said. "These are Luna and Lacey. How'd you end up out here?" Her throat worked like she wasn't sure whether to answer. "Finally," she said, "I thought I could make it to my sister's before the weather turned. My car broke down. I didn't have cell service, so I started walking. The trail looked clear until it wasn't. I tried to backtrack, but the creek broken bar." She trailed off, shaking her head. "You were lucky," he said. "A few more minutes in the tree and the storm might have knocked it over." She closed her eyes like she didn't want to imagine that. That night, he gave them his bed and took the couch. The girls fell asleep first, wrapped in spare blankets, their faces soft and peaceful under the flicker of firelight. Sophie lay awake longer. He heard her crying quietly once, her breath shaky and uneven, like she'd been holding in the weight of the world for years and finally couldn't anymore. The next morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a soaked, silver-drenched forest. Sophie stood on the porch with a mug of coffee, looking out at the trees. Her hair was pulled back now, her clothes still a little muddy, but she looked calmer, softer. "Thanks again," she said, "for everything." "You're welcome," he said simply. She hesitated. "We'll head out soon. I don't want to be a burden." "You're not. You don't even know me." He looked at the girls playing with Wyatt's old toy blocks on the rug. "They seem happy here." She smiled a little. "They don't smile much. Not since their dad died." Luke's heart pinched. "I'm sorry, drunk driver. Last fall." She took a breath. "I haven't been myself since. Maybe I was never really equipped for this on my own. But I'm trying." "I know what that's like," Luke said. "My wife passed away 2 years ago. Cancer. My son ... He hasn't said more than 3 words in weeks. Sophie turned to him, eyes widening. "I thought you seemed a little too good at all this." He chuckled, short and dry. "I'm not. I just got used to pretending." They talked longer than either expected. By lunch, the girls had bonded with the house like it was theirs. They insisted on setting the table and asked if they could help make sandwiches. Sophie looked bewildered by the way they laughed. She said they hadn't been this playful in months. That afternoon, Wyatt came home. He was cautious around strangers, especially after losing his mom, but the twins were persistent in the way only children could be. By dinner, the 3 of them were building a fort in the living room out of couch cushions and arguing about who got to be the dragon. Sophie cooked that night a chili from scratch with a side of cornbread. It had been a long time since anyone had cooked for Luke. He wasn't used to laughter at the table, or the way Sophie touched his shoulder when she passed behind him. It was disarming and warm and terrifying all at once. The next few days blurred. Sophie didn't leave. She didn't say why, and Luke didn't ask. It became easier to let her stay than to imagine them gone. She helped with meals, folded laundry like it was second nature, and tucked Wyatt into bed when Luke worked late in the garage. He found himself looking forward to her laugh, the way she sang under her breath while cooking, or how the girls would fall asleep in a heap on the rug with storybooks sprawled around them. One night, after the kids had gone to bed, she stood out under the stars on the porch, arms wrapped around herself. "I don't think I'm crazy," she said softly, as if answering a question he hadn't asked. "I never thought you were. Everyone else did. After James died, I ... broke. I still don't know if I've put all the pieces back." Luke walked beside her. "Maybe you're not supposed to put them back the same way." She looked up at him. "You don't know what you're doing either, do you?" He laughed. "Not even close." She stepped closer. "Then maybe we can be lost together." He didn't kiss her. Not that night. But he wanted to. And when her fingers brushed his as they turned to go back inside, it felt like the beginning of something that might save them both. Weeks passed, then months. Sophie never moved out. Luke never asked her to. Their lives merged like 2 rivers after a storm. The kids became inseparable. Luke and Sophie filled in each other's missing pieces. It wasn't perfect. There were arguments, tough days, memories that clawed their way back at an opportune time. But there was also joy, real, healing, everyday joy. Then one day, the unthinkable happened. Luke's ex-wife's parents filed for full custody of Wyatt. They claimed Luke's home was unfit, that he'd brought strangers into it without thought for the child's well-being. It was Sophie who stood by him through the court hearings, Sophie who gathered testimonies from teachers and friends, Sophie who held his hand when the final judgment came in their favor. They walked out of the courthouse with Wyatt between them, and all Luke could think was how none of this was supposed to happen. One storm, one strange woman in a tree, 2 little girls and a broken heart. It was all chaos at first, but now it was a miracle. Every night, as he watched Sophie braid the twins' hair before bed, as Wyatt told her about his day in a voice full of life again, Luke knew, sometimes, God didn't speak through thunder or signs. Sometimes, he whispered through falling rain, through tangled branches, and through the voices of little girls calling for help in the dark. And if you were lucky enough to hear it, and brave enough to answer it, might just change your life forever.